Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this movie breakdown. What we're going to be analyzing today is a short scene from the Bourne Identity. It's a really neat sort of 7-second transition, but it has some really fun editing techniques. So we're going to analyze it and then recreate it. So let's go ahead, grab that coffee, and jump right on in. This is going to be a bit of a long tutorial, but it's something you can just sit back, enjoy, watch, and then learn a little bit about the editing process. So once we're in here, we're going to take a look at this Bourne Identity scene right here. We're going to take a look. It's only 7 seconds long. We have the phone flip, then we have quick transitions. We have this map in the background, and then it transitions into the assassin. So all of that is about 7 seconds, but it'll take us about 20 minutes or so to recreate this, to analyze it, and then to recreate it. It's a great job of setting the scene for this transition as well. You'll notice a couple of fun elements in here, and the first one is that this scene right here is recreated a couple of times. So this exact scene right here with the brick building and the train, if you take a look, when we move over, that second right there, it's utilized again, and then at the very end, when we're finally getting to this point, it's utilized once more. And if you actually take a look, it only is about a second or two. There's only, or I would say a frame or two before it's completely taken over. But this idea of constantly coming back to this a few times is cool because it creates a central theme as we're jumping around of where we're heading. And a little Easter egg here. If you take a note at the very beginning here, watch this. This is actually VFX. And the reason you know that is because there was actually a mistake in the VFX. So if we take right there, you can see the prep jumps. This whole bar jumps right like so. The phone moves, but it does not. So even the experts get it wrong, people. So it's a kind of just a neat thing to see that where the VFX is in this stuff, and even something that small can be VFX. But we're going to be recreating this, so let's go ahead and start with this. I have a set of different pieces of footage I got from Envato Elements. It's a great online stock video thing where you pay a monthly fee and you can just download all sorts of things. So I scrolled through and I found basically some recreations that we can add to these shots. The first one we're going to recreate is very simple. We're just going to recreate the cell phone. We're going to throw this on really quick, and we're just going to move this to a place where it makes a little bit more sense. For example, the ringing portion of this. So we just want it to be ringing. We have a ringing cell phone happening right there. We're just going to cut that back. And then if we actually hide this top layer, we can kind of see where the beats are. So if we move forward and then we move it to just right there, we're going to make that cut on our footage as well. And then if we play that back really quick, we can see that we have the cell phone. Easy. Now, the next step is we need to see this central idea. So this is going to be the clip that keeps coming back over and over. So we need to grab a good one. This top one is very white, so if you only include it for one frame, it's going to look like it's flashing at you, and we don't want to do that. So we're actually going to use this Shanghai shot right here, this really nice color-graded blue. And this is going to be kind of our central shot that we're going to keep coming back to. So all it really needs to be here for is, I believe, one frame, maybe two. Yeah, 2 frames before it cuts out. So we're just going to cut that away, and then we can see right like so. Maybe one more frame, and then boom, it transitions. So now we just need to grab a different scene. And in this situation, we're going to grab this sort of floating colorful, it's a different part of Shanghai here. And with this, we're really just trying to transition it again away. So you can see that we go to this main one and then we transition it to the secondary one, and then it sort of wipes to a different spot. Now in this, obviously they set up a few cameras. You can see that this train line is the central theme of this. So there's the train here, then when it transitions, the train line's down here, and then when it transitions, the train line's right here. It kind of looks like we just moved to the left a little bit and zoomed out. So we don't have that good of footage. That's what makes this look really coherent, but we can still recreate the general idea. With this particular set right here, we have this white coming over, and I would almost guess that this is a physical element combined with a background exposure boost to sort of finish this off. So what we can do is really easily recreate that by going down here and clicking the color matte and creating a white color matte. So if we just go through the process, we make sure that it's white, click OK, and we'll have ourselves this white color matte. We can drag that on top of our footage and then go to this polygon mask and then unhide the footage so we can sort of recreate it. And then if we zoom out here, we can actually sort of drag this over. And what I like to do is make this middle one disappear so we can recreate that actually coming in. So it begins right here at this scene. And we're just going to take it and we're just going to drag it out. And this isn't something you have to recreate frame by frame, but in this tutorial, that's what we're going to be doing. Add a little bit of feather, and it's going to look just like that sort of matte finish down there. Now, that one's a little more color corrected, so we could do the exact same thing with our footage. We could sort of make it more of that cream white color, but for brevity's sake, we're going to just continue with the pure white. So we can then animate it by going up here and going into that position and scale. And if we move forward, we can just keep adjusting the mask path as well. So actually, we need to animate the mask path right here. Move this forward one, click on the color matte, and then the mask one, and we can just animate that forward. One more. And you can see that this is where the exposure burst kind of comes in. Right here kind of seems like the line where this mask goes, but the rest of it is getting exposed almost from like a top-down perspective. So we need to recreate that in the other scene as well. And then after that, it's done, and we're on to the next shot. So we'll go ahead and kill this one and this one as well. And so now when we take a look here, we can sort of see that we've recreated it a little bit, but we need that exposure burst. So if we go into this aerial footage here, and we go to the Lumetri color, if it's not available, just go to Windows and then down to Lumetri color. Just wiggle one of these, and it'll add it over here. And so now when we go to that basic correction, we can go ahead and hit that exposure button right there. And we're going to animate this exposure by just moving forward. And at the very end here, we kind of want it to be massively exposed. So it's going to create this sort of flash effect, and it looks very similar to the beneath flash effect as well. So now we can take a look by adding some other footage. What I'm actually going to do, since we don't have the most footage here, is if we just take this and sort of, cut it down and find a little bit farther in it. If we just zoom out here and just cut it to way far away, it's going to look like a different piece of footage. So that's what we're just going to utilize. So if we zoom ourselves back in here, so it sort of transitions to this other side. And it actually kind of gives the exact same appearance because that's there now, and then now it's moved over. We can even zoom in a little bit, make it just feel a little different. But let's take a look at this. So now we have the intro, and then that same sort of flash transition as we move through it. Take a look by hiding both of these. And yeah, it looks pretty similar. Now, let's take a look at this next one, which is essentially, it's just going to be this played out for a little while. And then we are back to that center theme right there before we move back over. So we can easily recreate that just by, jumping back and forth here a little bit. By grabbing this shot right here, and then clicking Control-C, and then just going to that portion where it actually creates the transition right there. And we can just then click Control-V on that, and then boom, we have our sort of quick transition over as well. Back to that sort of scene before we move on. And we just want to make sure that's the same length. It looks like it shows up in this frame and then disappears. So it's only 2 frames long. So once we get back over here, this has changed again, and this is where we might want to utilize our other scene, this aerial view right here, by sort of putting it in, zooming it out because it's 4K, getting that nice view, and then maybe, yeah, that looks good. So it's sort of a quick flash, and then now we're into a different scene. And the same thing happens here. We're into that different scene, and then suddenly we cut to this white, and then it unexposes back into a different scene here. So we can do the exact same thing. Again, we're going to go ahead and hit that cut button, kill that, and then we're going to look for another scene. Now, in this particular case, we're running out of stock footage here, but we can utilize really any of these that we want. Let's just go ahead and grab this. Well, we'll keep using this aerial one right here. Just, again, zoom out, find another random place in it to grab some footage for maybe this back end here. And then we want to start it fully exposed. So if we go ahead and wiggle that again, go to that basic correction, start it off as the exposure being maximum, make sure it's unhidden, and then we just transition 1, 2, 3 back to that original exposure here. And so now we have that quick burst. And if we again hide this and take a look, it looks exactly the same. Now we got to get onto this back portion. The back portion is this idea of putting this map under it. So if you see that right when the exposure is gone, a map appears. And we can do the exact same thing by dragging this map over. We need to bring that scale down. This axe is going to have some issues, but that's just, you would film this to make it look a little better. we're going to take this opacity and we're going to bring it down as well, sort of that same opacity. And if you can see now, you can kind of see the map under this. So when we move forward with this now, we're going to see that as it moves forward, if we hide this, we have this idea of this couple background transitions and a couple foreground transitions. So first we're going to tackle the background, which is the map here. So we're going to move forward and we're going to find our point. It's going to be a slow zoom, and then it's going to cut to a different portion, a zoomed in portion of the map. You can kind of see it just zooms in on this quadrant right here. And then it transitions top right. So that's what we're going to do to start off with. We're going to take the map. We are going to grab it. And we're going to slowly scale it in, maybe by about 10 as we move forward. So we're going to move forward to that point that it cuts. In this situation, it's going to be a cut right here, right at this portion. So we just want to zoom this forward just a little bit, maybe by 10 or 12. And then if we take a look at this, looks a little aggressive on the zoom, so we want to reduce that down. We want it to be like a slow zoom, so maybe 55. Still even aggressive, maybe even just 50, just a 5% or a 5 scale zoom. Yep, that's looking a little better. And from this point, we now want to make another cut. And this second one, we're going to start it off a different zoom. So we can actually turn off this scale to reset it. And we were going to then just start it off sort of zoomed farther in and maybe, a little different, maybe to the left a little. And then from there, we can turn on the position and scale, move it forward a little bit. Again, we want to kind of find that next transition point here. So it goes until the next cut, which is right here. And you can see I've actually added markers here just for myself. If you right-click, you can actually create markers, and that will help you when you're doing something like this. But we're going to go up and to the top right like this and see if that's too fast or not. A little bit on the fast side, I think. So we're going to go ahead and just bring that back down a little. This is all just, experimenting around, and this is the editing process right here. That's looking a little bit better. It seems like there may even be a tiny bit of zoom going on, so we can do that exact same thing as well. That scale is going to go from that 70 to maybe like 73. Just a very small amount of zoom as we move forward. And that's starting to look a little bit better. Let's just take a look there. Yep. And then from this point, we transition again. So let's take a look at that next transition. From here, it's basically just a zoom in, and then that red box begins to appear. So that's pretty easy to recreate. Go here, and then we just want to do a zoom. Now, here is a sort of a got you here. We need to make sure this anchor point is where we want to zoom in. So on this particular case here, we're going to grab that anchor point, and we're going to sort of put it where we want it to zoom in, which is right about here. So now when we actually go to that scale, and we transition it forward, as we slowly zoom it in, it's going to scale in the right place, which is up there, instead of this idea where it's actually going to zoom in from the corner. And so now we have this neat sort of transition where it is starting to look a lot like the original one. So we want to kind of create that scale and make sure that that zoom is progressing over until it's finished, which is right about here is where it cuts off that other one. So we're just going to make sure it scales there, and then that map needs to be gone. So now we have the background map created where it just moves over, jumps a little closer. Great. Now, if you notice on the original clip, there was a foreground change as well, where it sort of cut to a different foreground shot here. So you can do that as well. It actually cuts back to that original footage. So this is where we want to tie that sort of central theme back together. So if we grab that tiny little footage right there, Control C, Control V, and then just delete this back end and sort of drag this all the way out, we've now sort of recreated the feel of the other one where we're coming back to that central theme over and over again, which is a neat feeling to be able to do. Okay, so now we need to do that black or that red box at the end there, that red transitionary box. So to do that, what we want to do is start off with a new sequence. So we're going to go click here, new sequence, click OK on that. And in this sequence, we are going to take the footage, which is just this little stock footage. I'll change the sequence settings to fit this stock footage, make sure that everything is scaled right, and fit this back. Now we're going to go ahead and create another color matte. So down here, color matte, and then we're going to make sure that it's red. So we're going to drag over to the red, and it's going to create a red color matte. If we drag that onto the top like so, And then we need to make sure that the color mat is the right size. So, we can scale that bad boy up to right there. We then want to go to this blending mode and we want to switch this to multiply. That's going to create that red effect that we want. So with this new sequence 2 here, we can go back to our original one and we can begin recreating this sort of square here. So if we go to the original, right when the square is supposed to come in, right about there, we can grab that sequence 2 and drag that on. If we scroll up, should give us a spot to do that. And what we want to do is make sure that this is scaled properly. It's going to scale up to basically here. But what we want to do is start it way smaller. So we're going to take this scale and we're going to bring it way down to something more to the tune of, and we want to make sure that position is also scaling. Sort of put it in this zone. Now, the one thing we need to do is we need to find out where the video starts. So the video starts is going to be about, and we have to do a little bit of math here since we're trying to recreate beats here. It's 16 frames, and essentially we're adding about 15 frames. So we need to make sure that the video does not begin until that 15 frame mark in our sequence over here. So we can do that very easily by finding the 15 frame mark right about here. And then adding this opacity sort of coming in effect. So we're going to start off at 0. And then we're just going to sort of transition it up by a few frames here. Move it up. And we can adjust this as we get there. Comes up to 100%. Now, if we go back to the sequence, we see that that is sort of working. Now, it's a little delayed. We may have jumped the gun there at the 15 frames. It may have actually been a little bit less than that. So, or actually, I think our transition is just way too long. So we're going to go ahead and just drop that opacity transition way down, and that should sort of bring it in a lot quicker. Now, once we're back in here, that is going to be looking a lot better over there. Trim off a little bit of the top there just to make it work. And then, okay, so now we want to go into this entire sequence as a whole. We want to go to that opacity. We want to drop that opacity down to start with, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. We're sort of going to transition that opacity and scaling in. So as you see, it comes up. It sort of rides downwards, so we can do that. We can just sort of move it down a little bit. Oops, grab this one, move it down a little bit, and then begin the scale. So in this situation, we're going to move to that scene, and then from this point on, we need to make sure that we create keyframes like so, and then move forward to where it's actually fully engulfed, which is right there. So we're going to scale this all the way up so it captures that sort of idea. And if we turn this on and this off, we can see that with this, we need to also bring the opacity up to 100. We've recreated that sort of effect. So it comes through, and then now we have that dark red effect. So now this is easy. We just jump back into here, and if you actually click on this and double click, it'll bring it to that position in the marker. So we're going to take that opacity of the red, the top here, and we're just going to make that drop down. So we're just going to go forward about 10 frames and then bring it down, and then we have that effect. And we've basically recreated this original edit from the top. Now, there's a couple things we want to do to finish this out, but let's take a look at our edit from the beginning. And it's feeling a lot of Jason Bourne identity, that transition that was created for that movie. The last thing we want to do is grab this all, right click, and we're going to nest this sequence. By nesting this sequence, we're then going to be able to affect the entire thing to get everything into the same sort of idea. If we go to the right here and we go into that creative tab, we're going to drop the saturation down a little bit. We're going to go to the basic corrections. We want to take that exposure, bring it down a little, bring the contrast down. This is just sort of muting the colors, and then we're going to grab that blue vibe. Now everything should feel a little bit more cohesive with this sort of same push on the top. And then finally what we want to do is we want to just go to our effects and then search for the crop. This is the way I like to add letterboxing. Drop that on. If we go to the top and bottom, we can add 10 onto both sides, top, bottom. And then now we have this beautiful end product right here where we have essentially recreated that Jason Bourne transition, all in Premiere Pro. This is a really, really fun effect, and it's something that I think as an editor, it's fun to do, is to grab movies and try to recreate them, because this is all in the edit. There's not a lot of VFX here at all. It's mainly just the edits, the phrasing, the theming of the entire thing overall. So it's a very, very fun thing to be able to do. Thanks everyone for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, throw them in the comment section below or on our website at adobemasters.net. If you want to see more videos similar to this one, including more movie breakdowns, we're going to be breaking down different clips and scenes and edits and really just showing how it all works together, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. They're very fun to make, and it's very fun to be able to see what you can do with just editing and just Premiere Pro. So thanks everyone, and until next time everyone, see ya.